Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Firsties. So I usually have, an intro, but I'm so excited for this guest that we're actually just gonna jump right in. You guys already know what to do, like, comment, do all the fun things. Thank you so much for listening, watching, viewing, subscribing, blah, blah, blah. I usually do have a long intro, but I'm so excited that you're here that we're just gonna skip that and go right into the episode. So I have the host of Shaping the Podcast, or Shaping the Culture podcast, excuse me. How do you pronounce your full name again?
Ebenezer Endiryas.
That's such a flex. That is such a beautiful name. And you go by Eb.
Go by Eb. Easy E.
Easy E. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I think I'm gonna do that one. So Easy E's here.
There it is.
I was telling him off camera that I'm so excited you're here. You're the first podcast host as a guest on my show. Yeah. So I want to pick your brain on a million things.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, you've expressed that you've also watched the content, which I really do appreciate. We really talk about that first gen experience. Yeah. So to dive right in, can you talk about that first gen experience, or just you're from Ethiopia?
Yeah.
And then you actually were born in DC.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which where we're at, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So what was that like? Was there a learning curve there or anything like that? Trying to bridge the two cultures?
Oh, yeah. It was a traumatic experience because when we eventually moved to Minnesota, my parents moved in the suburbs because they wanted a good future for me and my siblings. Mm-hmm. And so I always struggled because I didn't feel like I was ever Ethiopian enough for Ethiopians, nor was I American enough for Americans. Because I would go to school and I'm not picking up on their cultural cues. I'm not watching the shows that they're watching. Yeah. I'm not listening to the music that they're listening to. I'm not eating the meals that they're having. So I'm just like, what world is this? I don't know what's going on over here. And then in the Ethiopian community, I never felt accepted because I didn't speak the language the best. So I can understand very well.
Same.
But I do struggle communicating.
Yeah.
And so you get the struggle.
Yeah.
And so that was frowned upon, and I never understood the jokes in our language. I didn't understand all the little intricacies that made up our culture. Yeah. I didn't even really like our food growing up. I didn't like the food till college. It's when I left home and I couldn't have it, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, this is kind of fire.
Yeah.
And so right around high school time, hip hop was really big. Mm-hmm. And I might be aging myself here, but when I was in high school, T.I., Lil Wayne, Jay-Z, Kanye West, those were the guys.
Gotcha.
And so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna embrace blackness. That's gonna be my identity or what have you. And so I remember in high school wearing these long baggy tees, these really baggy jeans. Air Forces were in at the time, and so I was like, I felt like I found who I was.
Yeah.
I'm black. I'm African American. And then I had a rude awakening, and I realized that I am black, but I'm not African American. And that was there was a lot there. And so it was just confusing for the longest. And it wasn't until college where I am learning who I am as an Ethiopian, learning my context, being surrounded by other firsties or other friends who were going through a similar experience, that I was able to piece together a lot of what I was feeling, and a lot of what I thought was a weakness actually turned into a strength.
And isn't that usually the case?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's definitely a full circle moment. Yeah. Absolutely. What I thought was what I was made fun of or made me feel like a loser or an other is the same exact thing that made me shine in certain rooms, and why I could have a brand now of talk. You know what I mean? And thank God I didn't fully go drink the Kool-Aid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I had older siblings who are wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
How many siblings do you have?
I have 3, so there's 4 of us.
And are you the oldest?
I'm the oldest. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we talk about birth order on this podcast a lot, and how that plays into your identity as well. The role that you play in your family.
Yeah. You're the youngest? No?
The youngest,
okay.
Yeah. You can tell I'm giving baby energy. This girl's crazy.
No. It seems like you're a free person, and so
Oh my God,
living your best life.
It's so funny when we talk. Now that we're older, we talk about everyone has a different memory.
Yeah,
memory's a funny thing, right? Our childhood.
Yeah,
and I'll be there we had the best childhood. And my sister looks at me, the oldest, what? Like,
No, we
I was
didn't.
taking care of y'all.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? I'm
That's
like,
it.
I was great. I was just like the performer. Like,
Yeah.
they looked at me to like tap, like to do the dance and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
it. And that's
yeah.
all I had to do
Yeah.
and get good grades. That was literally it. My sister's like, must be nice.
Must be nice indeed. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was not my life. Yeah.
Yeah, but I completely agree with you that like when I had the same thing where when I went away to college and I just saw how talk to other people and their families, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I actually have it really, really, really good.
Yeah.
And how lucky we are. But I had to go away from that environment to then realize, oh no, I actually want to come. I don't actually want to come back.
yeah.
My parents are dope, and we're
Yeah.
lucky to have each other.
Love my culture.
Yeah, the
love what
food,
we're
the
about.
faith,
yeah,
like
yeah, everything. It's
yeah,
beautiful.
It really
It's
is.
rich.
It really is beautiful. Yeah. So I kind of want to also talk about your podcast. Now, would you say Shaping the Culture, it's a faith-based podcast?
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah.
Definitely.
You're also a pastor as well.
Yeah.
For what church?
It's called Perazim. It's a
Okay.
Hebrew word, and
Okay.
it means God of the victory.
Okay. And how long have you been a pastor?
So January, I'll be coming up on 10 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
It's a
amazing.
long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's that journey been like for your faith, and also like what led you to the podcast as well as being a pastor? Because I do a deep dive of the guest, so I did stalk you for the last 5 days. Don't be intimidated, and strictly research.
Yeah.
And
I get it.
the way that you speak, and I think it's the gift that God gave you for sure. Not everybody can do that. The way that you're witty as well. Because I think, especially with this generation now, if you are just keep on dropping gems, it can be overwhelming. But if you
Right.
throw in a joke, laughter is the best way to like break the walls down.
Yeah.
It's really, really moving. How you're able to address like the nation or the masses.
Yeah.
So how did that journey start?
Yeah, no, first of all, I really appreciate you sharing that. I always tell people I got tricked into ministry.
Okay.
That was not my ambition in life, was to move to LA and be an actor. That's what I want to do with my life. Word?
Yeah. I went, failed, came back.
Oh, you tried it out?
Yeah, a little bit.
I got to hear more about that.
I was like, the rejection. They talked about me while I was in the room. I was like, this is not for me, and I need to be with my family. So it might happen later, but yeah, because I love all that.
I still believe like I'm going to be living in LA one day.
Yeah, one day. Yeah, just will look differently.
Yeah, exactly. And so, anyways, I was headed in that direction. I actually grew up a pastor's kid, and watching my dad's life, I wanted no parts of it. Like I just didn't care about it. And I'm an introvert. I'm very shy. It takes me a while to kind of like open up and really be myself. And so leading others just seemed terrifying. Like I barely know how to lead my thoughts in the moment. What am I going to do? Telling people how to live their life. I'm trying to figure out how to articulate this sentence right now. Like, what do you want from me? Yeah. So,
that is real.
yeah.
Yep.
So all of that. And then I just saw, growing up in a house where your father is in ministry, you live in a glass home. Everybody watches every step that you make. And I remember from a young age, my dad's like, hey, your actions reflect on us. And so if you act out, that's going to impact our ministry. And I actually took that to heart. And so, talking about identity, I didn't know who I was for the longest, because for the longest I was trying to put on for church folk because I didn't want my dad to look bad or the house to look bad or what have you. And so, all of that, there's so much there, but I was like, want no parts with that. And then I got saved at an early age. I got saved at age 14, right before my freshman year of high school, which is tragic because I had plans for high school. Like I was ready to wild out.
Don't they all? Yeah.
And God's like, nope.
Like right now, like snatch him
He
up.
snatched me up. Yeah, I was already down the wrong direction. I had the wrong group of friends, and so, but the Lord had his way, and so I got saved. And after this really supernatural encounter, all I could do was tell my friends about what I had experienced, the love that I had come across. And again, I was not seeking out to be a pastor. I didn't want to do ministry, but I couldn't contain what had happened to me, to myself. I had to get it out. And I was fortunate enough to have a youth pastor at a young age who saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And so what I love about his approach is he didn't just out the gate come and say, hey, you're called to be a pastor. He's just like, hey, I love your zeal, your passion here. You mind coming 10, 15 minutes before service and helping me set up chairs? I was like, I could do that. So I would come and set up chairs, and then some time would pass, and he's like, hey, can you open up the service in prayer? It's like, I'm a little shy, but why not? And then it just continued to build, and he's like, hey, can you lead this Bible study? And then it turned to, hey, can you give a sermon? And then, hey, can you lead this Friday night service? And then over time, I was walking in something that I really didn't think I would be walking in. And it wasn't until I was a junior or senior in high school, a good friend of mine came to saving faith, and I felt so much joy. And I remember feeling, I want to give my life to this. There's no greater joy that I can perceive than seeing people who I love and care about experience the same thing that I experienced. And so that was the beginning of me thinking that this might be. But the Lord is, God really knows how to trick you, because if he had told me all that I'd be walking in, I'd have been like,
no, thank you.
No, thank you.
Double intended to the next person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
absolutely,
it's a little bit here, a little bit there. And then I look up and I'm in ministry. And so, I was not that guy that was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Just the Lord worked on my heart, and over time.
Had a plan.
Yeah.
Your testimony reminds me of, if you've got a chance, I actually have the book over there, which you can have. Absolutely. It's called Bamboozled by Jesus from the comedian Yvonne Orji.
I read it.
Same. Yeah. It's one of my favorite books,
dope.
right?
Yeah.
That reminds me of that.
Yeah. That's That's dope.
That's one of my favorite books for sure. So it sounds like I could totally relate this too, that like when we're struggling, I think all of us are just always struggling with like purpose.
Yeah.
Like, why am I here? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And I'm finding that like that worry that people have is because like everybody wants to feel significant. We all want to have nobody, and I'm not saying people want to be famous. There's a difference, right? It's just meaning in life and having a meaningful life.
Yeah.
And it sounds like when that one friend that came, you probably felt as though like, this might be my purpose. Like how good this feels that I'm serving.
Yeah.
Because we're all supposed to serve in certain ways. Some people are comedians, some people are pastors, some people are dancers.
Yeah,
like
that's right.
Yeah. So wow, that was probably I would be overwhelmed with emotion at that moment.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It was
to find out that age too, like.
Yeah, I was blessed and fortunate. Yeah, to find that out early, but then to also have external affirmation, to have a mentor, pastor, leader to speak into what I was feeling, because I had all these emotions and feelings, but at 17, I don't know how to make sense of that. And I needed a safe space to kind of unpack that, and having a safe community and a good leader to call things out. And so my pastor was not surprised that I was like, yeah, I've actually been seeing this in you for a couple of years. This is what I think you're called to. I don't want to impose that on you.
Yeah.
I'm willing to walk with you though. Let's take this step by step. And that's what we did. And yeah, I mean, that was a while ago. So
yeah. How beautiful is that?
Yeah.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
So I also think that like mentorship like saved my life, saves everyone. Like get a mentor if you're hearing this. Whatever you want to do, whatever lane you want to get into, find someone who can do it.
Yeah.
And then someone who's going to hold you accountable, but also like root for you and stuff. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So then you, first of all, how's been that journey? So 10 years, like that was the beginning. How was the journey of being a pastor?
It's been, it's a great question. It's been difficult, beautiful, fulfilling, life-sucking, all at the same. It's
all the emotions. You're like all of the above.
All of the above. But it's been one of the things that the Lord has used to make me more like him. And so I now always say, if you want to reflect the characteristics that Jesus had, just serve him. You don't got to be a pastor, but maybe serve your community, serve your church, put yourself in a situation where you're thinking about someone other than yourself, and then you will be confronted with self. You don't know how impatient you are until you're serving others. You don't know how short your temper is until you're serving others. You don't know how crazy you are until you're serving others. So the Lord has done a work in my heart, and I think more than like what I do as a pastor, I think when I look back on the 10 years, I celebrate who God has made me to be in the journey. And I think that's the most important thing in life. It's not necessarily what you do, but who you are. And I really do believe that in today's culture, we're so fascinated with trying to figure out what we're supposed to be doing. And I think that when we focus on who we're called to be, we'll find ourselves in what we're supposed to be doing.
That part.
And so I think if you focus and you move your attention away from trying to figure out what degree you should have, what major, what job you should pursue, I think working on figuring out who you are will help you determine what you do. Because what you do will ultimately, like I've been pastoring for 10 years. I don't know if I'm going to pastor the next 10 years. But I do know who I have become will equip me for what the next 10 years looks like. And so, yeah, I don't know how churchy we can get on Firsties.
You could.
We can go there.
You could go all the way there.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there's this one story I got to share. So
yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to speak Christianese, but there is an instance in the scriptures where Jesus asks his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And, everybody's trying to figure out who this Jesus character is. And, the disciples were like, "Oh, some say you're John the Baptist. Some say you're Elijah. Some say you're one of the prophets." And then there's a moment where Jesus turns to Peter and says, "Who do you say that I am?" And then Peter gets this revelation. Peter is usually the one, I resonate with Peter because Peter is usually acting out, saying all the dumb stuff, always getting in trouble. But for once, he got it right. He's like, "Oh, you're the Messiah. You're the anointed one. You're the Savior." And Jesus responds back by saying, "Well, flesh and blood didn't reveal this to you, but my Father in heaven has revealed this to you." And he says, "And you are Peter. On you I will build my church." And what's so dope about that story is when Peter got a revelation from God who Jesus was, Jesus gave Peter a revelation of who he was. And that like spoke to, because I feel like, and I know I'm biased because I'm a Christian pastor, but it isn't until we discover Christ that we can discover who we are. It isn't until we discover God that we can really have a deep understanding of who we are, and why we're here. Christian or not, everybody's trying to ask, like, who am I? Why am I here? And what role do I play?
Purpose, meaning, all of it.
Purpose. And so I believe that when you come in contact with God, he will not just reveal to you who Jesus is, but he'll reveal to you who you are. And then he'll begin to develop you. And then whether you're a comedian, podcaster, pastor, engineer, doctor, lawyer, I know the parents are watching.
Dr. Laura, wrap it up. Yeah, that's everyone watching on the Hobbit shows.
yeah. You'll be good because who you are is far more greater than.
Yeah, no, the reason why I just reacted to what you're saying is because when I was much younger and didn't know any better and was having like a self-pity party over something that happened, one of my mentors said, "Don't, like, never forget who you are and whose you are."
Yeah, that's a word.
So, and that really is a word because that gives you all the confidence to walk in your your faith and be confident. To remember where you came from and who the creator is. Absolutely. Yeah. So. Yeah. So this is exactly what I want this podcast to be. I'm so freaking excited. Yeah. Talk about whatever. Absolutely whatever.
For sure.
Now, shaping the culture.
Yeah.
So what's the origin story about that? Yeah. Going from pastor and then podcast host.
Yeah. So it started, I actually celebrate 7 years this month of the podcast, which is kind of crazy. 7 and 10
years. Congratulations, man.
Thank you. How it started, I was in college. I was in so I studied psychology.
Same.
Word.
Yeah.
Okay. I was in my intro to sociology course and I was learning about all things culture. What's a taboo, right? What's a norm? Mm-hmm. All these things. And then at the same time, I was seeing all of my friends that I grew up with in the church leave the faith. College is that time where people explore, go do their own thing. And when I would sit and have conversations with my friends about why they were leaving, I discovered very quickly that a lot of their issues with the faith, the church, had very little to do with who Jesus was, but everything to do with the culture around the church. So their issue wasn't really with God, it was with the culture that we were experiencing in the Ethiopian church. So for instance, growing up, we were told, don't get your ears pierced, don't get tatted, and that was gospel. Mm-hmm. Then if you actually study scripture, you'd realize that that's not actually what the text says, but because in the Ethiopian church culture, that's what was pushed. People thought, well, if Jesus has a problem with our ears getting pierced, then me and Jesus aren't cool. And so they would walk away. And so I'm learning about culture. I'm learning about what's going on with my friend group. And I'm like, there's a disconnect here. I feel like if people actually had an accurate depiction of who Jesus was, maybe they wouldn't be so turned off by who he was. So I was like, you know what? What if we created a platform where we talked about what it looked like, not to be impacted by culture, but what would it look like to shape the culture? And I initially brought it up with my friends. I'm like, guys, let's start this podcast and like, let's talk about our experience as like Christians in this culture. And all of my friends are like, you're wildin'. Who do you think you are? Who in the world is going to want to sit down and listen to us talk about anything? And I was like, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Noted.
Yeah.
Noted.
I was like, yo, you're absolutely, I don't know who I thought I was. Nobody's going to tune in. So I like walked away from that idea. That was in 2012. For 4 or 5 years, I could not shake this passion and this desire to start a podcast. 4 or 5 years later, I was like, you know what? I don't really care if nobody listens to the podcast. I don't really care if none of my friends want to do it. Clearly this is a passion. Clearly there's something in me that wants to do this.
Yeah.
Let me not ignore this. And so in 2017, I started the podcast. And at the time, I had some college friends who started a podcast and they were averaging 30 views an episode. So that was kind of like my metric. I'm like, we made it if I get 30 views on this episode. And we dropped our first episode in 24 hours. We had over 240 views.
Oh, you're lit.
And I was like, hey, yo, I don't know 240 people. What's going on? And I was like, maybe there's something here. And that was kind of the beginning of the podcast. It was really to serve my friends and my community. I wasn't really thinking about reaching the masses. I was thinking about reaching my friends. I was like, how can I make Jesus appealing to them? They're not going to come to church. They're not going to hear me preach, but maybe they'll listen to a conversation.
Yeah.
And I know Christians are notorious for condemning culture, critiquing culture, and copying culture, but I didn't see very many Christians who were contributing to culture. And I was like, yo, the Bible says you're called to be in the world, just not of it. But I think a lot of times we think because we're not called to be of it, we shouldn't be in it. And I was like, no. Like, we got to be in this thing. And so that was really where the podcast was. This was a time where I didn't know that you can get monetized by podcasting. This is a time where I didn't know you can really grow your influence. It was strictly a passion project to reach the people around me. And then 7 years later, I think God did something with it that I never.
Yeah, God does what He does best. Literally, yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
The one thing I also wanted to mention is actually speaking about the one thing that I always remember from that book that we mentioned earlier, Bamboozled by Jesus, is, and kind of in the realm of what you're talking about is, like I've had conversations and I'm still walking in my faith as well. Yeah. So I don't know all the answers, where I've definitely been condemned by certain family members, and then I did not do the research enough to be like, it didn't make me feel good. And I'm like, but I should have asked myself, well, where does it say that in the text?
Right.
And social media as well. Like my cousin always says, like, be mindful of the faith-based podcasts that you listen to, because not all of them actually are about it. Like, really.
Facts.
And the other day I just saw like someone say, it was the way he said it was funny, but he's like, when did we stop reading the Bible? Yeah. Like, where is like, what happened to these mega church? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's so funny.
Oh, it's nasty out here. Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. And, but speaking about what you just mentioned with shaping the culture and the origin of that, and how you noticed kind of what was happening with your friends.
Yeah.
The one line from that book was, Yvonne Orji said, some people will never know Jesus.
Yeah.
You are the only, because Jesus isn't us, you're the only Jesus they'll know. Is God in trouble?
Right.
And that shook me to my core. Like, so you're just leading by example, not, shoving it down their throat or anything like that. And then it might open up their heart and plant that seed.
That's right. Yeah, that's it. Right. I think like so often Christians are known for what they're against, but they're not known for what they're for. And that's what I want to do with this podcast. It's like, hey, I don't know what your experience was growing up. I don't know what you see on social media, but we're for a lot of the same things you're for. We might have a different approach to the thing, but we care about a lot of the things that you care about. And so my heart is really through not just my words, but my actions and my life show that Jesus is an attractive person. Like in my humble opinion, like I think he's that guy.
He's the GOAT. He's dope.
GOAT.
Like
and if we gave him a fair shot, I think he could change our lives.
Yeah, because he's waiting on you. He is waiting on you. Absolutely, yeah. So talking about the podcast, you've had guests of like, you just had Matt Chandler on. I watched that. Megan Ashley loved. Yeah. Jackie Hill Perry, Brenda Palmer, Preston Perry. Yeah. And you asked these really great, you guys get into it, like uncomfortable conversations as well, like things that not necessarily that they're talking about, which is really great.
Right.
Because if you're really going to do this, you cannot avoid any topic, essentially, which you're not.
Not at all.
So what's that experience like that journey of getting these awesome guests? Like, I know sometimes you, like, getting certain these people, you were so humble to share your, kind of give them their flowers while they're there, which is so sweet. Yeah. So what's that experience like with this journey of having a podcast and getting these guests and traveling?
It's so humbling.
Yeah.
Mila, like, I can't believe I get to do this. I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
I was sharing with you off camera that 2024, I just started doing this full time. So this is kind of what helps pay my bills. And this is kind of what I'm doing. This is my 9 to 5 now. And it's wild because 7 years ago, I never thought that this would be a reality of mine. And for me, I reach out to these guests selfishly, like, because I've learned and grown so much from them. Mm-hmm. And so when I reach out to get them on the podcast, again, sometimes I'm not really thinking about their influence or the impact worldwide or nationwide as much as I'm thinking about how they've impacted and influenced me in my faith walk. Mm-hmm. And so when they say yes to coming on, I'm like, no freaking way.
Yeah.
There's no way that they just said yes. And then we get on the couch or we get in the studio and we record an episode and we build a bond that like goes beyond the pod episode. That's something I never thought would happen, that these influencers or these people that I've learned so much from become friends and become people that I can actually hit up, and people that, like, I just had a live show in LA and there's an artist who I really love, and I've had him on the podcast a couple of times, and he hit me up. He's like, yo, I'm just going to come just to support. I was like, no way. I buy money to go see you live. Like, and you're just here.
God.
Yeah. And so that's something I didn't account for. That's not something I planned on. My heart and my aim, my ambition has always been, how can I bring people that I've learned from, so that those that are tuning into my platform, my podcast, can also see in them what I have seen from them. And so it's been dope. It's a dope journey.
So what a trip that, like, someone that you admire now admires your work. It's like, whoa,
what is going on?
Yeah, what is going on? Yeah, absolutely. And also I completely relate that, like, we even talk about off camera, like having my mom on and stuff, and how like I never thought I'd be able to get there. And similar to you, like, what I'm hearing is that you have this newfound information, meaning those people, they taught something in you, and now you want to like share it to the masses. Like, I'm like, look, this is possible. You can have a healthy, honest relationship with an African mom who at one point was not my, like those things. I had my brother on. We talked about our dynamics that changed growing up. You know what I mean? I've had my cousins on too, and we've had real conversations, because I want people to say, like, look, it's possible, and I'm no one special. It can happen for you.
It can happen for me. It can happen for you. Straight up.
If it can happen for me, it can happen for you. Absolutely. Now you mentioned that you went to LA, so you were talking about the Room tour.
Yeah.
It's DC, Atlanta, Dallas, LA. Like, you're literally living my dream. I know I'll get there eventually, but so exciting that you do that full time. And I saw from a quick Instagram search that it's an immersive experience with food excellent, music, rich convo, artwork, and good vibes. Yeah. So I know you went a little bit into detail about that. So how was that like performing? Is that the first time you performed live, like for the podcast?
This is my second tour. Yeah.
Love that. You said, put some respect on my name.
No. But like, it goes into the question you're asking. So the first tour I did last year. Yeah. It was phenomenal. Okay. And so what ended up happening was, initially when we kind of set out to do this tour, we thought we were just going to attract church people and Christians, because it's like a faith-based podcast. Yeah. I speak at a lot of churches. Those are the people that are familiar with me and my work are people of faith. So I was like, we're going to do this tour and we're going to see a lot of people that home team, right? So now what happened, we went on this tour last year and we saw a bunch of people that were maybe in the church their whole lives, but left at one point, or people who were faith curious and just didn't know where to go with their questions. They didn't feel like they could trust the church. They're like, this seems like a Christian event. It's a conversation. I feel like I have a voice here. I can. And so at the end of the tour last year, we saw people coming to the faith. We saw people, I'll never forget the show in Houston. This young lady came up to me and was like, yo, I grew up in the church, but my discipler manipulated me. As a whole traumatizing experience. I left the church. Recently, the Lord had put on my heart to come back, but I didn't know where to start.
Yeah.
I was on Instagram and your event came up. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I came. This night marked me, and I need to find a church. Do you know any good churches in Houston? And how do I learn how to trust again after that? I was like, what is going on right now? You know what I mean? Like, that's not who I thought we would be reaching.
Yeah.
And so this time around, we call it the Make Room Tour because those were the people we were thinking about. We're like, how do we make room for people who want to understand the faith but don't necessarily trust the church, who don't necessarily have the best relationship with Christians, but they're genuinely searching and seeking truth, right? And for me, I love what I do as a pastor. I don't want to get in trouble, but I also feel like being a pastor is very limiting because as soon as you say you're a pastor, it just comes with fill in blank, whatever your experience is, good, bad, whatever it is, you just associate me with that. And like I do appreciate the impact that I've made and the impact that I'm making in the church. But like over the years, I've been like, yo, I want to again, be in culture and make an impact in culture too. I just don't want to be in a Christian bubble. Like that's my thing. Like I can't just sit around with church folk all day. Like that's no good for me. That's no good for you. We're called to this like purpose, and we need to get out there and use our gifts to make much of him out there. And so this time around with this tour, we're like, okay, let's purposefully plan a tour that will impact and reach people that are not the kind of people that we're used to, not the people that we engage with, not the people that we're doing life with, not people that we're in community with. Like we want to reach people who are far from God but want to get close to him. And so that was kind of the vision behind the Make Room Tour. And that was why we're like, hey, let's have live music. So we brought on Victory. I don't know if you're familiar with who Victory Boyd is. She's dope. So she signed to Jay-Z.
Okay.
Signed to Rock Nation, but she's a believer. She loves the Lord. And she's just a great example of being excellent at her craft, but in love with Jesus all at the same time. Because Christians have a reputation too. Like sometimes like people who are in the faith aren't excellent at what they do. And that's why people aren't drawn to the church or drawn to the faith. But she's like a great example of someone who knows how to hone in on her gift, who puts in her 10,000 hours, who doesn't cheat the system, who loves music and also loves God. And then we had Ryan Ellis as well, who equally gifted, is about the same thing. And so we're like, okay, we're not bringing worship leaders in. We're like bringing recording artists in. And then everybody loves free food, right? So you bring food that might draw people in. We had a DJ in a couple of cities. And so, it was an immersive experience. And what we did is we told the story of the gospel without telling people we're sharing the gospel. So through music and conversation, we gave this beautiful story about how Jesus had impacted our lives without using words like Jesus or gospel.
The thing that's beautiful about that is that like it's similar to like Tabitha Brown's testimonial, and it's like it's only relatable if it's you came from the trenches or you had an experience and now you're sharing your story. And I completely agree. Like I might listen more to someone who I really, really admire their craft, whether it's like skateboarding or rapping or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you like spoon feed me the gospel.
That's it.
Right?
That's it.
Because when it's a holier than thou person, or it comes with all these things. Because I always say like pea-sized brain. I don't mean to, but I'm still human. You know what I mean?
Right.
And one of the most tough things to be is a human being.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's the most challenging thing in the world.
Absolutely.
Like even Jesus had a tough time, right? So that's a great idea. I saw the videos and stuff, and it just looked like a lot of fun too. Like it looked like cool and fun and hip.
It definitely was.
It was the culture, yeah.
Yeah. And I did it with some of my best friends in the world, Los and Isaiah, and their podcasts, and so Light and Love. But yeah, I can't believe I get to do what I love with who I love, serving the God I love. It's kind of how I've been summing up this tour. And so, yeah, we wrapped up the tour in LA this past weekend, so I'm tired, but...
Oh yeah, that time change, too.
Yeah, but I'm grateful.
Yeah. So really quickly on like just traveling, like how's that been? Like...
I in the last 2 months, I think I've been home for 1 week.
No, is that something that you enjoy, or you're like, can we stop real quick? Because some people like that, like they like to live out of a suitcase. Like, what type of person are you when it comes to that? I
don't mind it if I have at least 1 or 2 days to myself.
Gotcha.
Because I'm an introvert. I love people. I love being around people, but people don't give me energy; they take energy from me. And so if I can find 24 hours to myself, I'll be good. But I love it. Like,
so you recharge alone?
I do recharge alone. Yeah, I have to.
Same. Yeah. I have to like prep for being social, and then I overcompensate by being like an extrovert. But really, I just like I want to be editing, watching TV. Like that's all I want to be doing. Yeah, to recharge.
Yeah. On Mondays, I literally spend the whole day alone. That's kind of people are like, that's depressing. Like it's actually life giving.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so. But I do love travel. I'm a foodie, so I love trying different food spots. I love culture. So every city has its own culture.
Yeah.
I love meeting new people and speaking and teaching to different contexts and churches and groups. It's when I became a youth pastor, I never thought that people would call me to like preach at their event. That was not even a goal of mine. That wasn't a dream because it just felt like it's little old me. Like who would want to fly me out to come speak to their group about?
Yeah. And
so because this isn't something I had imagined for my life, I appreciate it every time I get to do it because it's so humbling to be, I mean, you can probably relate as you're putting out podcast episodes and people are reaching out and they're telling you, yo, this episode really helped me out. This episode started a really dope conversation with me. And you're just like, never did I think. Yeah. I'm over here just sharing my story, giving you things that have happened to me. And then it's resonating with y'all. And it's a humbling thing. And so I can complain about TSA and flying and different things like that. But when I really think about the impact, I'm like, yo, I got a lot more to be grateful for.
Yeah, it's a very humbling experience. I can also relate on like, one of the things when I was like prepping and developing this show was like, how am I going to get guests? Like I was like, should I do a co-host? Should I get guests? Yeah. And we came down to just being a host and then having guests. But I'm like, who would want to come on? Like when the first 5 episodes when we launched was all like family members because I wanted them to get to know like what the show is going to be about, like the foundation of like family, faith, like the culture and all that stuff. And and I'm like, and then people are DMing me or DMing our producer or whatever and saying like, hey, I'm a musician or comedian or whatever. Can I come on? And it was one of those things of like, I dreamed of this like 4 years ago, but I was just too scared.
Oh, wow.
So I had this dream a long time ago, but I was just ignoring what God was telling me. Which was my mistake. Yeah. Which is my mistake. Yeah. And it's a very humbling experience because it's like, oh, like I can't have guests unless I have the podcast first. So, right, like create it and then they will come. It's as simple as that. Yeah. I mean, it takes a lot of work. It is. It's a lot of discipline. It's a lot of like, I got to edit, can't hang out with my friends or whatever the case is, or I prioritize. It's literally work this, seeing my family, going to church, and that's basically it. And then just repeat. Like, that's all I do. But it's very fulfilling, but it's a very, like, I would have never thought people would be reaching out and us, like, having to like do research on them and be like, should they come on the pod or not? Because again, not everybody. I need to know like what you're about and stuff like that, obviously for the brand. But like it's a very humbling experience for sure. I'm still like, wait, what?
And I've said this to you. I think I said this to you on Instagram, but I do want to say it publicly too. I really do appreciate and respect what you've got going on. You actually came on my TikTok algorithm. I was on TikTok, and one of your videos popped up. I'm like, who is this? Because I don't know a lot of Avishas in this space. And I don't know a lot of Avishas in this space who are doing a great job either. And so I saw you on TikTok and then went over to Instagram, and I had one of my friends was already following us. I was like, yo, you watch your podcast? She's like, I've been watching your clips or what have you. And so I went on your podcast and I was like, yo, first of all, the level of excellence that you bring to the table, your ability to ask questions, navigate conversation, be present in the moment, your consistency, the thumbnails, like all of that. I just want to say publicly, like, you're killing it and we need more people like you, and I'm rooting for you. And I really do think that the best is yet to come, you know?
It means so much coming from you just because you know it. Like you're in this space as well. And you're 7 years in, I'm like 7 months in, you know what I mean? So,
and you're way ahead of like where I was at 7 months is nowhere near where you're at 7 months in. And so, you're doing the thing. And I really do feel like it's just a matter of time. Yeah. Cause you've got the content and you bring in the excellence. So
yeah, it's the same thing of like, I don't know what's in store. I'm just doing what I've been told to do. Yeah. And so because I can't imagine where this is going to go. I just have to work on, like, literally all I'm thinking about is posting every Monday. That is literally it.
Yeah.
And focusing on the small wins, right? Same like your experience as well. Like first it was setting up the chairs. Then it was like, can you lead this Bible study? And then you're a full-blown pastor. Yeah. Because if they told you at day one, you're going to be a pastor, you're like, get out of here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to Hollywood. Yeah.
Catch the next flight. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a very, So thank you for that. That was very, very sweet. That means a lot. So some of the topics that you cover on your podcast this is just running down the list. You've covered love and respect, the glory of diversity, the problems of Christian dating, struggling with the faith, surrendering to the faith, money, health. It goes on and on. Yeah. I'm going to link all of your information below. Guys, do yourself a favor and go check out Shaping the Culture. You cover literally everything. It's amazing. Yeah. So I want to ask you, like, what's your process on that as far as who you decide to come on and what you want to cover on your show? Yeah,
great question. As far as what I want to cover on the show, it's really inspired by my conversations with friends. Okay. So me and my friends, this might sound boring to some, but what we consider a good time is good food and good conversation. So we'll go to somebody's house, we'll order really good food, we'll find on TikTok the next best thing, and then we'll order it and we'll sit in somebody's living room and we'll talk for hours. And we just dissect things and we go really deep. And it's not like we're like, hey, come over and let's go deep. It just is a byproduct of being with one another.
Yeah. Natural thing.
Yeah. And we talk about everything. And it's because we're living, like, we talk about money on the podcast because I'm thinking about money all the time. We talk about dating because we're all dating. We talk about marriage because a lot of my friends are getting married. We talk about diversity because we're struggling with diversity in the workspace, in the church, in our neighborhoods and communities. About it. And what I found to be true is that God actually has something to say about all of these things, right? And like a very taboo topic in our community, let alone the Christian Avisha community, is like sex. But me and my friends are like, yo, if we don't talk about this, we're going to struggle tremendously. Because what ended up, and I learned this as a pastor, friends started getting married and everything they thought about sex just didn't happen the way they thought it was going to happen. And now there's shame, there's confusion, there's resentment, there's anger, and there's suffering and silence. And I was like, yo, if we don't bring this to the light, we're going to die in silence. And so if God created this, if God talks about this, why is there shame in bringing it to the light? And so for us, it's not like, hey, let's talk about all these things because it'd be fun to talk about all these things. We talk about all these things because we're living it out every day. These are conversations. These are real conversations we're having. And so as far as bringing on the different guests that we do bring on, it's just, I love, like, I don't just produce my own podcast. I love watching podcasts.
Yeah.
I love reading, and I love sermons. I love just learning. And so I'll read a thing, or I'll watch a thing, or I'll listen to a thing and think to myself, I would love to hear this person's perspective on the thing that me and my friends were discussing last Friday night.
Right.
And so here I am, just in their DM shooting my shot, like, hey, I've got this little podcast. Can you come on? And like, yeah, 8 out of 10 times they say, one of the things I've been surprised by throughout this journey is how willing people are to say yes. And the more guests that you bring on and the more solidified your guests are, it just, you build a reputation. And so, for instance, I just had an interview recently with someone who's a pretty big deal. And the reason why I got a yes from him is because he saw the other people that I had on. And so it just kind of helps,
it does.
once you kind of build your rapport and things like that. And so, but yeah, that's the inspiration, life, hanging out with friends. We're talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and we're just like, how do we get our money right? The Bible says a righteous man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. Okay, if the Bible says it's righteous to leave generational wealth, what are we doing about it? So me and my friends will put each other on to different things that we can invest in. We'll watch different finance podcasts, and I'm like learning and I'm listening, and I'm like, hey, if I'm benefiting from this, I'm pretty sure my audience can benefit from this. And so let's talk about it on the platform. And so, yeah, it's a faith-based podcast in that we look at everything through the lens of faith and scripture. But really, I do believe that like anybody can listen to the podcast and benefit from it.
I was just about to say, it applies for everyone. It really, really does. Yeah.
Yeah.
I find it very attractive, and I'm cheering you on because of my faith as well, but it can apply to anyone, which is awesome, which is what you want as well.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
That's so awesome. Yeah. Congrats on everything.
Thank you.
God, man, I wish we could talk for like 10 hours. So I will definitely add all of your socials below. Is there anything that you either want to plug or share with the Firsties audience before we wrap up?
Yeah, I guess maybe my encouragement would be that anything is possible if you like put your mind to it.
Yeah.
You work hard.
Yeah.
You surround yourself with like-minded individuals. I think for the longest growing up, our only options were, being a doctor, lawyer, engineer. And I've seen you even talk about this on your podcast. There's a lot of money in content creation.
It's the new wave.
It
is.
There's a lot of money in being a food critic. I know it's not the most popular thing to be like, I want to make TikTok videos on different.
It sounds silly. I get it. Yeah. It's like if I had a kid and they're like, hey, I want to post videos to strangers and then I get money for it. I'm sorry, what?
What are we talking about?
A safety concern though. Like, what are we talking about? But but it's a new wave. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, you get it. Yeah. That's the passion. And so I guess my encouragement would be, take your thoughts and desires seriously, measure it with your friends. And we talked about having a mentor, I always say you need people around you you need external affirmation to figure out if you're actually gifted in something. Like for instance, I love to sing, but I'm not a gifted singer. So I'm not going to pursue a route or a career in music, but having people around me to be like, hey, you're not gifted in this. Maybe you should try this out. Or having friends to be like, hey, you're gifted in this, but you need to refine your gift a bit. Because that's equally important to have friends that are able to see where you can go with this and just seeing the end from the beginning or what have you. But I would really just say there's so many different ways to make an impact. There's so many ways to reach people. And God has uniquely wired you and gifted you for such a time as this. And again, with hard work, dedication, time, anything is possible. Literally anything is possible. If you were to tell me 7 years ago that I'd be doing this full time, I would think you're crazy. But like living in this now, and then when you're surrounding yourself with other people that are doing it and at the level that they're doing it and what they can do in it, you're like, yo, I have this burden specifically within my community to just really encourage and cheerlead my friends and just let them know like, hey, don't ignore whatever is on your heart. Pursue the thing, give it some time. I think that think you'd be surprised at what you're able to accomplish if you give yourself a chance. And so, yeah.
That's beautiful. That's a great way to end this episode. As always, guys, thank you so much for listening, watching, viewing, subscribing. Makes my heart very, very happy. Again, I'll add all of the links and tags below. So make sure you check out Shaping the Culture podcast. Yeah. I for sure want to come onto your podcast. I just got to figure out how to get there.
No, we'll have you on. We'll make that happen.
I'm so excited. Yeah. But that is this episode, guys. We'll see you in our next episode. Take care.